Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, August 18th, 6 p.m. Let's call this meeting to order, the regular board meeting in the Milford Exempted Village School District. I need a roll call, Mr. Reed.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I need a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. I need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes of the board work session on July 18th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. I now need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from July 21st, 2022.
So, what do you say? So moved. So moved, yeah. Second.
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. We now have some presentations. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. This evening we do have a special guest. We have Joe Braden, who is from the Ohio Auditor of State, Keith Faber's office. So we'll turn it over to you, sir. Just make sure that microphone's on.
How about now? There we go. Awesome. It's great to be here tonight on behalf of Auditor State Keith Faber to present the Milford School District the Auditor State Award. It's important to note that this puts the Milford School District in a very select group. The Auditor State's office audits nearly 6,000 entities, and fewer than 20% of all these entities that are audited are even eligible for this award. The Auditor State Award is presented to local governments and school districts upon the completion of a financial audit that meet the following criteria of a clean audit report. The entity must file financial reports with the Auditor State's office by the statutory due date without extension via the Hinkle system and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The audit report must not contain any findings for recovery, any material citations or material weaknesses. It must not contain any significant deficiencies or uniform guidance, single audit findings, or any questioned costs. The entity's management letter shall contain no comments related to any ethics referrals, any questioned costs less than threshold per uniform guidance, any lack of timely report submission, bank reconciliation issues, a failure to obtain a timely single audit in accordance with uniform guidance, any findings for recovery, or any public meetings or public records issues, and the entity shall have no other financial or any other concerns. This award represents the hard work of all the Milford School District employees, Board of Education members, superintendent, that all strive each day to achieve accounting excellence. But Brian, if you would step up here for a moment. I especially want to recognize Brian Rabe, your treasurer, for his outstanding leadership and his commitment to fiscal integrity. Congratulations, Brian. On behalf of Ohio Auditor State Keith Faber, I would like to present the Milford School District the Auditor of State Award. Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I know we say this a lot, but I just wanted to congratulate Brian. He is an excellent treasurer, and he always goes above and beyond, and this is a very well-deserved award.
Thank you.
And how many years in a row is this now?
I want to say this is like 6 or 7. We've received the award every year that I've been here, and I know there was a couple years prior to me that the reward was also received. So, yeah, I want to say 6 or 7 years in a row.
That's a pretty good batting average.
Yes.
Anything else? Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Brian and his staff as well. Takes a team, right?
Absolutely. I do have one staff member here, Kathy King. The other members of my staff did have some issues and conflicts that kind of came up last minute. So, but Kathy was here. We went through the audit together as well. So, yes.
All right. We do have one other presentation this evening. I did want to give a little briefing of our safety forum that we did hold here in this room. It was streamed via ICRC as well. That recording is still available. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone that was able to come, those that have watched it. I think that one of the things that is important for our school community and community at large to know and to understand is that we do not and are not required to do anything with House Bill 99. So no action means that nothing happens and things stay the same the way they are. I think it's important to also note that school safety goes beyond House Bill 99. It's the everyday measures that we take now, the conversations that we have with our fire departments and police departments, Milford and Miami Township. But most importantly, the great relationship that we have with them and the ability to go through our buildings, recognize things that maybe we should change or could change, and then we follow through with those items. Chief Mills from Miami Township did give us some nice praise about our school safety. We did talk about those measures as well that we're continuing to take, hardening of some entrances. We don't want to get too specific about it. But I think I can say for certainty that we don't want to put guns on the hips of any of our teachers. We don't want them in classrooms with that. And so, that's sort of how that safety forum went. We did at the very end give the opportunity for a thought exchange that's been open for a while now. We do have the results of the thought exchange. That's here. There's a link here that you can see some of the results. You can see that we had 191 participants. Can you go back for me real quick? Sorry, you're too good. There were 212 thoughts, and there were 6,655 different ratings. And so if you would, go ahead and click on the top thoughts. All of the top thoughts, they're just too numerous to read. There's probably about 20 that end up in this 4.5 range. And most of them have the same message: no guns. We don't want guns in our buildings. Our teachers have enough to do. And so I'll reiterate what I had said last month, and that is we want our teachers to teach and to build community and not necessarily have a firearm on their hip and a holster, et cetera. So that's sort of the recap of the safety forum. Did meet today with someone from the Ohio School Safety Group with the local county superintendents as well today. The training that's talked about is still, it's not there. There's no curriculum for that. So there's nothing to do at this point. So that's really it for the safety forum tonight, unless there's any questions or comments from the board.
Comment-wise, I thought the forum was great. It was really good to be there, and to there aren't a lot of situations where we can have dialogue with the community. Like these meetings aren't necessarily dialogue, so that was really good. And I think throughout the whole process, through the executive session and the meetings we've had and the parts we've been, I as a parent and board member, did not realize how strong our relationship is with the local police departments. And that's really the heart, the heart of the community and the heart of keeping kids safe is having the relationship. They know our schools, they know our grounds, they know our principals, and they're there and they're part of it. So if an incident ever were to happen, it's not the first time they're gonna be there. They'll be familiar, they'll be quick to respond. I have full faith in both Chief Mills's, is that the plural, Mills's?
Yes.
That they would be there to do whatever is needed for our school. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, they really are a part of the school community. When I was going around to some of the elementary schools, here's the fire department, here's the police department, they're passing out things to the kids as they come in for the first day. So just a wonderful relationship. You're absolutely spot on.
Yep.
Thank you for addressing this tonight. You and I and a lot of us have had a lot of conversation about this, and unfortunately, there's been a fair amount of misinformation in the public domain, and it's coming from places I don't know, but I know that all of us are on the receiving end of a lot of emails from concerned parents, and I think they rightly should be concerned with some of the things that they've commented on. And I'll just share with everyone, and I'll speak for all of us, it's near unanimous, the view on safety for our school. And the firearm on the hip comment, that not only the administration, this entire board is in violent agreement with the direction that we're going, and we're so thankful to have the relationship with the local law enforcement. So I appreciate you addressing it. Our community should be concerned, and hopefully everyone understands that we take it very, very, very serious. And thank you.
Not only are we in lockstep with one another, apparent from going to that meeting, we're in lockstep with the community as well.
Yeah, for sure.
They're all right there with us. So.
Yep. Just one final comment, not necessarily about the safety forum, but a huge shout out to both Miami Township and Milford Police and Fire. I mean, they were everywhere in our buildings yesterday, so it was wonderful to see them.
Okay. Well, that brings us to our first public commentary. Mr. Ray, do we have anyone?
I do not have any for the first one. I do have one for the second.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the treasurer's report, but before we do that, we are now going into a different way, a little bit of doing our business here. It is we're doing voting by consent. I'll let you explain exactly what that is, because I will muddy the waters.
Not a problem.
100%.
If you look at your board agenda, I'll give you an example. You'll notice on the agenda, I've got items 1 and 2, which are actually actionable items. Instead of taking a vote on each individual item, we'll group those together, is how it will go. So you're basically cutting down on some motions, votes, so on and so forth. So we'll just group everything together.
And in the event that we would want to pull one out and vote on it separately,
You could do that.
we would do
Right.
that through Robert's Rules of
Robert's
Order, and
rules,
you
we
would guide us.
Yeah, we would adjust the agenda and pull those out.
Okay.
Correct.
Just, go ahead. John.
Mr. Combs, please do. I mean, I think what's important for everyone to know is that nothing has changed, as Mr. Combs has brought up multiple times. I mean, there's constant discussion. You meet at committee meetings. The agendas stay the same. Everything is there. Everything is fully transparent. Did I capture that?
You did. Not only do we discuss it in the committees, but just understand the consolidation of some of this is, there's a lot of redundancy here. You see, I call this the bobblehead sometimes, where you're like, yes, yes, yes. It's because we've already really vetted a lot of this. And if we can move some of this high-level summary into one vote, it just makes it a little bit easier. And by the way, Robert's Rules, just to dig in a little bit more, our president must offer a discussion time for every one of these. That is by law, and we all have an opportunity to discuss that. So I just wanted everyone to, I wanted to double down on the fact that nothing's really changing. We're just consolidating a few of these higher level themes with the votes. That's all.
You're on.
You got it. So recommend the approval of the board reports for the month ending July 31st, 2022, as well as the donation from the Milford Basketball Association in the amount of $30,000.
Okay, we're going to ask for a motion and a second for items 1 and 2 on the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Just a couple items to point out. When you look at the board reports, we are still working off temporary appropriations that we did back in June, which we only did for 3 months. The auditor's report that I needed to come back in order to do the full appropriations, I did receive that this week. So next month, we will bring full appropriations to you, which will meet the statutory deadline. I haven't it done by the end of September. We did receive an advance on our real estate here in July. We did receive final settlement in August. So August reports will show a final settlement for both Hamilton County and Claremont County on the taxes. Also, in the all other operating revenue, if you remember, we had missed the deficit spending piece at the end of fiscal year 22 because of that TIF. We did receive that TIF in July, so that's reflected in these numbers as well. The ending cash balance for July was just shy of $49 million. General or interest off the general fund was a little over $7,600, and we did have a large investment mature in the bond retirement fund. Interest for the month was $74,673. Those dollars will go back into the construction project, so those will be used for that construction. The donation from the Basketball Association, those funds are going to be used to purchase new basketball uniforms for both the junior high and I believe the high school as well.
Yes, and certainly thank you to the Basketball Association. I think that their donations come in the form of $10,000 a year, if I remember correctly. So this is kind of a 3-year. You need to have something you want to buy, and then they make the donation, and then we take care of it. The last thing that they did were the major portion of the video boards in the gymnasium. So they're good citizens. They take care of us, and we give them gym time at some gym in the district so they can practice and play. Okay, so I have a motion and a second, right?
Correct.
Why don't you call the roll?
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you.
The next item I have is just an informational item. By state law, anytime we have a credit card or a procurement card system and we receive any type of rebate on that back, we have to formally report that out to the board. So in July, we received a refund, rebate, cashback rewards, however you want to call it, in the amount of $2,628.46 for activity that we did on the credit card last fiscal year. And again, it was just informational only.
And that is annual, and that goes into the general fund?
It does go
correct?
into the general fund, yes.
Okay,
That's all I had. Thank you.
thank you. We're going to move on to superintendent's business. Mr. John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. We do have a middle school update. Just wanted to, let's go ahead and click on that link. It's just a site, not a site, actually the building rough plan, if you will. We're looking at 3 floors. So the far left, you can see the academic wing, which would be on the west side of the campus. And then you will then see in the middle, the purple area, that's our student dining. The green section would be some admin, nurse's office, et cetera, school counselors. The blue section there would be the academy. And then orange is music. And then, of course, the yellow you can see is the main gymnasium along with the auxiliary gym. And then the second floor, you can see it's mirrored. First, second, academics, first, second, third floors are mirrored. And then the electives area, you'll see right in the middle there. Those green hexagons, if you will, those are staircases to the second floor from the dining area. It uses a flex learning space as well. And so this is sort of this is a design right now that we're looking at with SHP. We have had some meetings about technology, HVAC, just some pre-construction type meetings. If you have further questions about that, I'm sure we can get Jeff up there to talk about those a little bit. We did get sort of a sneak peek today of what an exterior elevation might look like. That's not ready for them to share out just yet, so they're going to go back and make some adjustments to it. It's a beautiful building. I think Jeff says it all the time. We're worried about the budget. You know, it's because of inflation, and construction costs are just crazy. We do have a good temperature, a gauge. Conger just did a middle school, I think. It was very similar in size. I forget the location. But we'll have some ideas of what those construction costs are going to be. So Jeff and I and the team, we're just kind of looking at ways that we can reduce costs, but stick to the Ohio School Design Manual, OSDM, correct, Jeff? Is that the right acronym? Thank you. So we're trying to stay under budget. Obviously, that's the best case scenario. That's kind of where we are with this. We do have, we'll get some more information out today. We did set a meeting today for September the 8th. September the 8th at 6 p.m. here in this room. SHP and Conger will be with us again. Perhaps at that time they'll have some elevations, exterior elevations to share, but certainly a refinement of this and potentially some other areas as well. We did meet with Kleinger's to talk about the site circulation as well. They'll be doing a traffic study probably in September, early September. We want to get kids back, buses and parent drop-off. We want to kind of let that work itself through for a couple weeks. So early in September, we'll have a traffic study as well, try to get numbers. I've expressed how important the site circulation is for us. No matter what happens inside, this building or outside this building, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to love it. But boy, we got to get that site circulation right. So they know how important that is to us in this community. So that's sort of the middle school update, unless you have questions that I can answer or Jeff.
Just a quick comment for anybody who's been following this, the building flipped from what we've
The
seen.
building
Yep.
did flip. The yellow gymnasium part, it did flip, so it mirrored, and so it would be where I'm sitting now, it would be back in this corner, but now it's going to be the gym. If we just kind of sat it down, it would be on top of the Robins in the weight room, and we'll get to that too. I've got a little comment or two about that. So that is correct. So it's been flipped, and that's where we are.
I think there's some good reasons. So I think the athletics lining up over there will be good. And then on the flip side,
Yeah.
site circulation and busing, that makes the academic space a little bit closer to the high school.
Yeah, and parking will be closer for folks if they park to get into the entrance, whether it's the gym or to the main entrance, the administration, it's closer as well.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
good.
The main entrance is just above the.
Well, if you see where the purple student dining area is, that to the left of that 90-degree angle there would
Yep.
be, it's white. That's the main entrance. You can see there's sort of a vestibule there, and then you would get into the green, which would be the admin area.
Is that another entrance that's down there by the gymnasium?
Yes, there will be access there. We don't exactly know what that will look like, but yes, there will be access there. And then there would also be access down, to the west, the top of this page as well. You can see a couple doors as well there.
Yeah, some really, as you pointed out, some really good reasons for flipping that design.
Yep.
John, who did you say is,
Okay.
oh, go ahead. Who did you say is helping us with traffic study and site circulation?
Kleinger's, Kleingers, I believe, is the correct spelling.
And-
They've done our asphalt work in the past, so that they're civil engineers, et cetera.
Okay, so one of the things on my mind is, in the interim, is there any suggestions that they could offer to bridge today to when we actually have a new campus built that could make this coming school year even marginally better than it's ever been? It's probably not in the current scope of work. It would just be great if we could get some additional maybe feedback from them if we haven't already.
It's not in the current scope of work. You know, one of the concerns is anything we do today is money that's going to be thrown away in a year or two. So that's certainly something to consider. One of the things we've talked about, you know, we've had 2 series of meetings looking at kind of concepts for site circulation, what it might look like. I met with them again. We met last week. We met again this week. And they're going to come out, again, as Mr. Spicer said, let things settle out a little bit. The first week and a half, 2 weeks are crazier than normal across the street. They're going to come out and not only just do traffic counts and a traffic study, but also just kind of see how our campus works. They're going to fly a drone and they're going to videotape, you know, the 30 minutes before school starts and what's the flow look like, where are buses going, where are cars going, who's walking, and they're going to do some of those kind of things that will really kind of firm up some of the concepts that we've got. One of the comments I made to them, you know, they were like, well, do you like this concept? And we talked about stacking and cars and how many people come and separating parent drop-off from high school students who are, you know, driving and parking and going in. And I said, it looks great, but I can't tell you for sure I like this until we see what the numbers are. You know, do we need 500 feet of stacking? Do we need 1,500 feet of stacking? So those are some of the things that we've been talking with them about. The traffic study will impact Wolf Pen and 131, but we're also going to be looking at actually the traffic on campus as well. Also keeping in mind that there's an additional 500 students and, what, 20 staff or whatever?
Right, yes.
The comment about the interim wouldn't be something that I would envision being hyper costly as much as I'm just thinking about things like larger signage and cones. And that may sound crazy, but if they took a look at how we are currently and said, hey, can you bridge us in a low-cost way? Again, if it's cones, paint stripes, and large signs, I just wonder if we can give the public a little bit of relief in the interim. That's really an idea more than.
Well, when they come out here in the next couple of weeks and do those traffic studies, that'll be part of that conversation.
Good, thank you. It's just, you had a smile on your face about it because you hear more complaints about site circulation.
We've been trying to get a traffic light out here forever, and we were denied again. And so, you know, it's a problem. We have a traffic problem, and no one seems to be willing to help us.
We'll have to keep asking at least 5
We
more
will.
times.
Yeah, and just one comment, I'm sorry.
But
Go ahead.
what is the cost of getting a police officer, like, out at, by Charity Lucas, like, when people are going out that way, that, like?
First of
that
all,
takes forever to
a
get
special
out.
duty request is $50 an hour, a minimum of 3 hours. So it's $150 a day. We have had conversations with Chief Mills about that. And I agree with him, and not that I like speaking for Chief Mills, but we have had conversations that we honestly don't think that will help that much. At the end of the day, the challenge is we have 3,000 people on the campus trying to get out, and it takes time. You know, at one point in time, we tried to make coming out of Eagles Way a right turn only from, I don't know, a half hour before school and a half hour after school or whatever. First of all, nobody paid attention to it. It's not really enforceable because it's private property. And even if it was enforceable, if somebody comes out and turns right, what they then do is turn left in the first neighborhood and then pull into the first driveway to turn around and turn around. So that really didn't work, and it didn't help. So we've definitely talked about that, but talking with Chief Mills and taking a look at it, I'm not sure that that's really beneficial. I also don't think, I'll be completely transparent, we've talked about, is that something we want our SRO to do, which wouldn't cost us any additional money. But again, it falls back into, is it really going to help that much? We don't think it will. And I also don't think it's the best use of our SRO's time. You know, it's really, he's in there talking to kids, building relationships as they're leaving for school. You know, so I think his time is better spent in the building rather than, the last hour of his day spent out at 131, doing this. So it's definitely something we've talked about. At the end of the day, I wish we could get ODOT to put in a light. And so far, and the traffic study may show some additional things, adding those additional 500 kids with the sixth graders on campus might swing things. We talked about that in our meeting yesterday. So that's a possibility. The biggest challenge with 131 is there's a turn lane,
Yeah, it needs to be way longer.
but it needs to be way longer when it's a light. So, and then that's talking about buying up right-of-ways and easements and, extending that to extend the width of 131. So, reading between the lines on the letter we got from ODOT last year, I think that's really the biggest hurdle to putting a light in at Eagles Way and 131 is extending that turn lane. One other thing, Mr. Spicer mentioned budget. It has been, every meeting we have, it's a topic of conversation, and I think our whole team is tired of me talking about it, and I'm a broken record as I keep reminding people of what that budget looks like. But our SD design phase, our schematic design phase, we're going to have that meeting on the 8th. Those SD drawings are due from SHP on September 9th. So the next day is when SD is due. They turn those drawings over to Conger, our construction manager, and then SHP and Conger both put an estimate on that design independently. Once those estimates are done, they bring them together, they compare, make sure they're, comparing apples to apples. How many square feet of, masonry block did you have, and if they're here, they talk about it and they level them up so that they're talking about the same amount of materials, and they look at their estimates, square foot type budgets. This is still pretty high level, but they come together, and this is about a month-long process. So I won't really have information at the September board meeting. Probably, hopefully at the October building and grounds meeting, we can discuss it. And certainly, I should have that information by the October board meeting of where we're at with that budget. And we are not allowed to proceed into the next phase of design until those budgets are reconciled with each other and they're at budget. So that's kind of the process that's coming up. And as Mr. Spicer mentioned, Conger has a project that they're actually bidding out that is very similar in size. It's 205,000 square feet, middle school as well. So they are confident they're going to have pretty good current numbers to compare it to. Now, where the economy goes, how inflation goes between now and when we would bid it out, 10 months from now is anybody's guess.
This meeting on September 8th with Conger and SHP, is that like our meeting we had on August 18th where they come and talk to the public?
Yes, so
Okay.
we're going to have a long day on the 8th. In addition to some committee meetings, we are going to meet with students at the end of the day in the junior high. At the end of the day, we are going to meet with the staff at the junior high. And then in the evening, we're going to meet with the public and give them an update of where we're at with the design. I'll be 100% honest, we're trying to figure out how to pull in our sixth grade teachers because their schedule is so different. They don't get done teaching until some of them at 3 o'clock, some of them at 4 o'clock. But my junior high staff's not going to stay till 4:30 to have a meeting probably. So we're looking at maybe doing a Zoom meeting or something, trying to pull them in. But that day, we're really trying to hit everybody to give them an update of where they're at. And then we will start probably around in October, we will start meeting with individual departments, staff. So we'll meet with the science department, we'll meet with the nurses, we'll meet with the phys ed department. We'll start breaking down, and the music department, we'll start meeting with them and going over some more details about things that go, their desires for what they want in their individual classrooms. Kind of an overview of the next couple of months.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions about the middle school?
I just wanted to say, at that August 18th meeting with SHP and Conger, they provided a lot of information, And we had pretty good attendance from the public. They really want input from everybody, just like Jeff was saying. Like, they're talking to the teachers, they're talking to the students. They really want this building to work for everybody, and we want this building to work for everybody. So if you're interested in this project, I highly advise you to attend these meetings. They're really great. You can ask any question, you can make comments, and you can really hear the progress of what's going on. It's very interesting and it's very helpful.
All right, I'm going to move on to item number 2, the Citizens Advisory Commission. Nothing new to update other than our first meeting is still August the 31st. We do have a current thought exchange out there. I believe it's active through tomorrow evening. And we're gaining some input from those 30 folks to see what is important to them and the direction that that group will head. So we'll have an update at the next board meeting from that group. Item number 3, the nest. All right, so I think it's really important for us as a school community and a board to kind of come back to the nest. We, as a board, you voted to demolish, that it was okay to demolish the Robbins building, the current weight room. And with that, something needs to happen. So we need to replace it. We had a work session. We had a conversation about two portions of that, one of them being 3 multi-purpose gym. That's an area potentially. The other area would be to replace what we demo, and that would be the weight room, the wrestling room, locker rooms, concessions, and bathrooms as well. That's very important. So with that, I think there has to be another work session with the board to have a dialogue about how are we going to pay for this. Are we paying for all of it up front, some of it, or none of it? We're going to finance, et cetera. So I think there's some decisions that you all have to make. I know that Brian is doing some back work on that as well, as far as finance options, if that's something you would decide to do. So I'm going to just turn it over to you as a board to kind of decide when the next work session would have to be. I do think that the important thing to remember is, as Jeff said, SHP and Conger are getting together on the 8th, and those designs have to be in by the 9th. While this is not necessarily connected, it's on the same site, and so it is connected, and we do need to make a decision by then.
By the 8th?
Jeff, we need a decision by the 8th, or at least a great direction.
I mean, I don't know if there is a drop-dead date, whether it's September 1st or September 8th or September 15th. You know, at the end of the day, we need to know this as soon as possible because, you know, building the nest, you know, in whatever version the board approves, again, as Mr. Spicer said, it's not the same. They're 2 completely separate projects, but they impact each other. And whether we build the nest or we don't build the nest or where it goes, what it looks like, will impact the middle school. The middle school impacts the nest, whether it's connected utilities. You know, we've talked about trying to potentially use some restroom facilities within the middle school to reduce the amount of restrooms we need in the nest. Because of distances, I don't know that that's going to work. Mr. Spicer reached out to the Claremont County Building Department, and there's not a meeting set up, but we're coordinating calendars, trying to set up a meeting with SHP and ourselves in Claremont County to talk about, you know, what we really need and things along those lines. So it really does impact what we're doing from a design perspective on the middle school, even though they're separate projects. So the earlier we can get a direction from the board is going to help us know which way to go and not have to re-engineer things, redesign things, kind of change things as we move down. You know, and one of the things I don't want to have happen is get that SD estimate and think we're in good shape, but because something changes on the nest that might impact the cost estimate on the middle school, and now all of a sudden we've got more cost in the middle school because of a decision that was made on the nest. Knowing what we're doing on that whole site makes that estimate a lot more accurate and a lot more, have a lot more confidence in what that estimate looks like.
So will we have the opportunity to have another option to look at other than the one that was presented to us with because I think I know we all agree, I think even without the junior high taking down the Robbins Center, that had expired from its usefulness. I think a school of this size and stature should have actual bathrooms, not portalettes. So I
Couldn't
think
agree more.
that something needed to be done there. I think, I can't speak for previous boards, why no, maintenance or money wasn't put into upkeep. But I think we all voted unanimously to tear down that Robbins Center, so something needs to be built. But the reality is we don't have any money. So we can all look at that beautiful drawing that we saw and would love to say yes to it, but then we still have to pay for it. So can we see a cheaper alternative?
I believe the alternate was whether or not you built the multipurpose building.
So that's the
part.
only cost option is with the gyms or without the gyms?
So there's kind of two parts to the nest that has been presented to the board, one of which, as Mr. Miranda said, is the multipurpose
Right.
area.
With the
The
gym.
other part of it is a combination of adding restrooms to the facility, as you
Right.
just mentioned. I think we owe it to our community to do. And the other piece of that section is merely replacing the weight room and Robbins building facilities that are going to be demoed due to the middle school. So we're not making it bigger. These aren't additional facilities, other than the restrooms. Those are additional, obviously. The rest of it is merely a replacement of what we have. As far as your cost per square foot to try to do it as cheaply as possible, pretty much what we've estimated is pretty
is the
close
only
to
one.
being as
Okay.
cheap as possible. Now, I will tell you, the original estimate they gave me had like I think it was a 4-foot block wall with a pre-engineered building on top of it. I went back to him and said that needs to be 8 feet because these are high school kids, they're athletes, they're playing sports. If you're going into a pre-engineered metal building, that's part of the reason, we got the Robbins building and it's beat up and the insulation gets torn out. To put up a solid wall that's not going to get torn up, in the long run, it's going to cost a little more money to build it today, but from a life cycle cost, I think it's money well spent. So we did look at a couple of those things as far as, life cycle cost and what's going to make, but this is not a Taj Mahal. This is restrooms and replacing the weight room and Robin building as again, I don't want to say as cheaply as possible because you could build it cheaper, but it would look like junk in 10 years. So we want to build something that's going to last and serve our community for a while.
Okay, so the only option is with the multipurpose gyms or without?
I'm not going to say there's not little pieces here and
But
there
for the
that we
main
can do,
thing.
but for the most part, with a significant amount of dollars, I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
And so what we'll need to decide then is what's the building, what are the pieces, and then what is the financing? Is it all in, is it all, whatever, however we kind of split up those. So that's what that work session that we're talking about will be. We don't have a date
Yeah,
for it.
we have a pot of taxpayer money called the general fund. And out of that pot of taxpayer money called the general fund, we are deciding to use some of that for capital improvement projects. The first one was the theater. So make no mistake, the theater's coming out of the general fund. Now we move over to our athletic facilities, which include concessions, restrooms, and locker rooms, replacing what's currently there. The Robbins building, which we all agreed to demolish and replace. The auditorium, and there's another piece that was on there. There's a fourth, and that is the bleachers. So all of these things, just to be clear to everyone, all of these things will be coming out of this taxpayer-funded pot of money called the general fund, And what our decision is going to be, which do we do? And how do we bridge the gap, whether it be through financing or otherwise? How do we bridge the gap to a levy that's going on a ballot in this community to add back to the general fund that we're getting ready to take away from? I wanted to try to make that as simple as possible for everyone. We've got these capital improvement projects that are not on the ballot. They will be on the ballot to backfill the money that we decide to pull from that. And it's going to be coming. And that's the dilemma that this board, who's trying to be as fiscally responsible as we possibly can to this community, that's the decision we're trying to make, is how do we fund it all? Because we don't have the money to fund it. And people would argue that when you have this pot of money to fund it. Well, my treasurer, or our treasurer, just mentioned it makes him uncomfortable in our last board meeting to move forward without something in place. So we've got a really important decision on our hand, and we're acting in our taxpayer community's best interest. And we're going to do the absolute best we can to bridge this fiscal responsibility and a can that's been kicked down the road for decades in this district with some usage or some capital projects that have well worn out their usefulness.
Yeah, and
It's borderline embarrassing to see people go into those portalets at a school district our size. I know you mentioned it before, Melissa, but I mean, to me, I'm shocked that can's been kicked so far down the road, and I don't think we can kick it anymore. We're in a vice right now, because I never ignore the taxpayers' dollars, ever. I never will. It's not our money.
And
So-
I think also in these decisions need to be a strategic plan of maintenance going forward, so that 30 years from now, the board of 2050 isn't sitting here with everything needing to be fully replaced again. I think some of these things could have been maintained over the last decades. But now, you know, we take the can that has been kicked and we have to deal with it because it's, you know.
I give credit to our president about kicking the can.
kicking the can down the road. And when we talk about the pot of money that is a general fund, we need to at least be aware of the fact that back in the day when we decided what our levies were going to be and what we were going to do, there had to be maintenance money in there to do the things that we're now having to pay the piper for. And we did what we needed to do to keep things running, and those were previous boards who operated under different conditions, but we are where we are. And borderline embarrassing doesn't even say it for me. It is just totally embarrassing to have to go in the portal.
I wanted to give you credit to say it's embarrassing.
It is atrocious, but we're gonna get there. I think this board can make a good decision on this. It's not an easy decision by any stretch of the imagination, but we got hired to do a job, and that's to take care of all the facets of the school, whether it's arts, academics, extracurriculars, athletics. That's our job, to take care of all of it. We need to do a balancing act, and we need to figure out what's the best way of doing that and getting the most that we can for what we've got. And we also have to know when to stop. So we've got some work to do. Back to a date to do this. This is, for the public, this is not something that we haven't talked about. I think we had on our calendars kind of penciled in either the 6th of September, the 8th of September. I think we've decided that we can't do it on the 8th of September. Because you've got a meeting on the 8th of September. So I would propose that we do it on the 6th, which is the Monday before committee meetings, a week of committee meetings, so. And yeah, any feedback from anybody else? Anybody goes, no, I absolutely can't be there. It's the day after Labor Day.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, we absolutely have to do it before Congress in here on the 8th. There's just a lot going on the 8th, and let's flush out as much as we can. Brian, you know there's a little bit of pressure on you to present some options here. And with more options, we can feel better and more confident about the decision we make. I mean, I want to vet as much as we can of this because we're in a tough spot. And, you know, we'll do what's right. We'll do the best that we can, but we can't without some of your help.
Sure.
Right? So.
And I think when we had our last discussion, I asked, would it move the needle on when we had to go for a levy, and the answer is probably not.
No.
I mean, it's the same time regardless.
Right, correct.
So did we say a time, the 6, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock?
I'm gonna
We
look
got a
at,
pin
I'm gonna look at
that right
Mr.
now?
Combs because,
We can do it at 5 or 6. Let's do it. Let's do it for 6. I'd rather do it.
yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest.
I'm usually back to back up until about 6.
So, we will need to have this is a work session, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're gonna need to have a notification from our folks here.
We'll take care of it.
So that will be September the 6th, the day after Labor Day. It's a Tuesday at 6 PM. Okay?
Yes.
Any
Yeah,
oth-
I can make that.
Any other discussions? We'll have a full night there.
Indeed.
Okay. Gonna give you, if you have anything else, Mr. Spicer, on that?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, then we're gonna move forward to the Human Resources business and back to Superintendent Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda, members of the board. Under item number 1, I would like to highlight our Milford University. I've got Jenny Berkeley up at the podium to tell us a little bit about that, and we also have a nice video to go with it.
Good evening, President Miranda, members of the board. First, another shout out. I want to say that we started the school year yesterday 100% filled with our certified staff. Wow. And if you've watched in the news, we know that very close districts around us are experiencing several vacancies still open, and also, of course, sharing in the teacher shortage. So shout out to our efforts really since March to attract and secure staff for all of those positions. So that, and we are down 2 full-time employees if you combine the part-time for our classified. So, and those were late resignations, so we're hoping to have those filled, but every student was cared for by an adult yesterday when we walked in the building. So that's a first shout out.
And the reason for that, I'm gonna say it. We are a destination district. People want to come here to work. When you have 40 openings and you have 400 applicants and other districts can't fill 1 for 1, that should tell the community that good things are going on here.
And we found great people, so on top of that, that's a little icing on the cake. And Dave, I hope this made it to the Miranda Good News Report, but if not, I wanted to be the first to share. So we experienced held our first ever 2-day Milford University, formerly new teacher orientation, where nearly 40 new certified staff were cheered on in the Milford Eagle Spirit Way by the entire all administrative team. These 2 days included an acclamation to our culture, our climate, our curriculum, our resources, and included a little fun with some team building activities. We all benefit from knowing that we continue to lean and learn from each other. It was quite inspiring for all of us, whether we're in our 29th year or whether we're in our first year. On day 1, each of our directors ran a station rotation, so while we were able to model good teaching and best practices, we were also allowing our directors to do their specialty. And on day 2, this was also very special. We had nearly over a dozen teacher leaders who were providing PD to their new colleagues. So we do, one of the big pieces in our reason for people to stay and employee engagement is giving them opportunity to grow. So for our young teachers to see our current teachers being teacher leaders, it was a really cool experience. So that was all new this year. And then we highlighted a few pictures, so here they are. Thanks to Jen for putting this together. photos don't do it justice, but there was a really good vibe, energy, excitement, really in the room for 2 days. So we're excited and feel like we kicked them off in the right direction. So that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Berkeley.
You're welcome.
All right, President Miranda, members of the board, asking for your approval of the agenda items 2 through 6 as presented.
I need a motion to approve items 2 through 6 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion.
Yes, I'm going to call your attention to number 2, the salary schedules. The board asked me to take a look at our salary schedules here at the district office to align them, et cetera. So we did consult with Greg Hester, Director of Human Resources for the Hamilton County Educational Service Center, who did come and present this at committee. Jenny, will you come to the podium if we have any questions or if you have any comments about the process? These are just the salary schedules for the administrators, the exempt and office, and the exempt classified as well.
So-
Okay, go ahead, Jerry.
So Jenny, it's fair to say that we made some improvements in this schedule. So for us
Yes.
to just say bobblehead yes, I think we need to take a quick pause and just realize we found some opportunity to streamline our salary schedules at Milford. And by hiring Greg, is that his first name?
Yes, Greg Hester.
Greg.
Yes.
By hiring Greg,
Not hiring, just consulting.
I'm sorry.
That's a free service to us with our Educational Service Center,
Thank
so that's
you.
important
Thank you.
to highlight.
I wasn't looking for that invoice. So by consulting with Greg, he was able to help us better streamline some of the schedule. And we're better today than we were last month as a result. So
No question.
that's just a comment from sitting in that committee and talking openly about it.
And I got a first draft of what I was looking for, and I'm kind of wading through that. I was doing that this afternoon. And a lot of information there. I know I'm going to have some questions somewhere down the line, but we'll work through that at an appropriate committee, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It was good work, and it was great collaborating, and I feel like a great result, so.
Any other comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Few pages to turn there. Okay, we move on to item G, curriculum instruction, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda. Members of the board, asking for your approval of item number 1, curriculum pay.
Need a motion to approve item 1, which is curriculum pay.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. We're now moving on to business operations. Mr. John Spicer.
Thank you, President Miranda. Members of the board, under business operations, asking for your approval of items 1 through 4.
Need a motion to approve items 1 through 4 of business operations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, I do have a few comments for you. Under number 1, the Milford High School Auditorium renovation, what you have there in front of you is the proposal for professional services. I'll take questions in just a second on that if you have them. Item 2, same thing, proposal for professional services for the high school Reking project. And then item 3, we have a change in milk price. We only increased price by 10 cents, but Jeff informed me that overall it was an increase of 25 cents, but we're only going to do 10. So we're only going to increase 10, not 25. And then item 4 is transportation for those students being deemed impractical.
So back to, no.
Yes,
discussion.
now you can
Okay.
go back to questions for
Back
us.
to the auditorium. So this
Yes.
is, we will still make a decision, sort of following up on Jerry's point earlier, about what is when, what we're approving money-wise when, because I saw,
Yeah.
was it this attachment that had like, do it all in once or do it over 10 years?
We're
Not this one.
planning on doing it all at once.
Yes.
Yes.
What you're approving tonight is simply the contract for SHP to do the design.
Okay.
And we will work through that, and obviously through committees, we will give updates as to budget, scope, things along those lines. The next approval the board would have will probably be in February or March, when we actually take that design, we take it out to bid, and then we will bring back the low bidder and ask for approval of the actual construction contract at that point in time.
So Jeff, would you operate as the GC in that regard for the auditorium?
Would I
When-
operate as the
Yeah,
GC?
meaning when we go out to bid for these projects, will we be asking one bid package for someone to do all of that, or are you
For
gonna
a
have?
project like this, yes, we would ask for a lump sum general contract bid.
Okay.
This would not be a construction manager at risk like we're doing with Conger to build the middle school. This
Okay.
would be a lump sum GC bid that obviously I would manage that contract, but we'd have one general contractor that would be responsible for all
Okay,
trades.
okay. Great. Yep. That's it for me.
Are there any other questions?
Can we discuss item 2 a little bit here?
Absolutely. So the same thing that Jeff just described for the auditorium, there's also a rekeying project at the high school. I do have a prop for you. These are Mr. Kaufman's keys that he has for the high school, and this will not, NOT, not get him in every door at the high school. Not enough keys.
It's probably
So-
half of what he would need.
Yeah, so
Bigger
that's
pockets?
part of the problem. I mean, there's some safety things as well. We don't want to get in too deep about the safety pieces of that, but
I do want to, there was a reinforcement that I saw a couple of weeks ago. I went, the first week of August, I was up in Columbus for 2.5 days for the Ohio School Safety Summit. And one of the keynote speakers was Frank DeAngelis, who was the principal of Columbine High School 25 years ago, a while ago, obviously during, when that incident happened. And I've heard him speak probably 4 or 5 different times at various conferences. And it's pretty much the same speech he gives every time, so I've heard it several times. But one of the things that jumped out at me is he was describing that day, and I shared a picture with Mr. Spicer of his presentation, and he showed a picture of the keys that he had in his hands that day. And when the shooting started happening, he went out into the hallway. He ended up gathering up with a group of female students, and the killers were coming down the hallway, and he grabbed his keys, went to get into a locked door. He grabbed the right key, but he had a key that looked, he had a set of keys that looked like what Mr. Spicer just held up. Call it luck, call it God's guidance, call it whatever you want. The first key he grabbed opened up the door that they needed to get into to get out of danger's way. And one of the things that's one of the reasons why we think this is so important is, to have a master keying system that works across the district, and when our staff needs to get students into safety, they're not fumbling with 25 different keys to get into what they need to get into. I also will say that we applied for the Ohio School Safety Grant through OFCC. We were originally denied, but recently after Uvalde, Governor DeWine came out and put another $100 million towards that. So we were awarded approximately $250,000 that will go towards this project to pay for it. From the state, we also have another grant in the tune of about $35,000 that will go towards paying for this project. So we are using a significant amount of, there's still going to be some money the district needs to put in, but we are going to put a significant amount of grant money towards this project to pay for this project.
And Jeff, isn't it becoming a standard, especially since the grant was approved, that pretty much this is the direction every school is going, is a centralized master system?
It's a no-brainer. From what I understand, when I was hired, the design on the high school addition had been completed. We were about 20% into construction. I was told at the time that we had a rekeying it was in the scope of work for the entire project, but due to budget constraints, it was pulled out. So we did not go into a master keying system. But I can tell you, I have one key that will get me into every door in the 4-pack, 4 elementary schools. I have a second key that will get me into every door in Boyden Site Belt. And just, it's a no-brainer that this really needs to be done. And we're looking at, you know, some other safety aspects that will come into this. The main part of this is getting a true master keying system at the high school. We're also going to be upgrading our access, building access system, our electronic access, that will upgrade that across the district. So it's not just the high school. We'll be upgrading our access control system in every building except the junior high, because we'll bring the new middle school into that process when we build the new middle school.
And when we talk about safety, I mean, it really is, locked doors is like the best way, and having access. Parkland, one of the teachers couldn't get back in the room, and her and her students were fatally shot. So it is so important to have easy access, safe access.
And this is not something that is a recent program. We've been talking about this for 2 years, and how we're going to do it and what it looks like and how much it was going to cost. It's nice that we have some state funds to work with now that kind of defray a fair amount of the difference that we were discussing between electronic and hard keys.
Total
Is that
project
correct?
cost is estimated to be about $500,000. And we've got about $280,000, $290,000 in grants that will offset those costs.
So better than 50%. So safety's our #1 job here, folks. I've heard it in 4 or 5 different ways here, whether it's site circulation or keying or a bunch of other ways. Any other comments? Call a roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you. Okay, this brings us to our second public participation session, and you say you have
I have one.
one. That's the first one of the summer.
You got it. 2. Rebecca Bourne.
Did I get it? Yes, good. Good evening, I'm Rebecca Bourne from 1106 Fox Run Road in Milford. I offer 2 thoughts to the board for some action. The New York Times recently reported a major cyber attack on Illuminate Education, a provider of student tracking software. More than 1 million student records were impacted, including highly sensitive data such as test scores and behavioral issues. Pearson, a major provider of assessment software for schools, was also recently subject to a cyber attack. I acknowledge that Milford does not use either of these providers. We do, however, collect and upload data gathered from emotional learning surveys. I've voiced my concern with gathering such data and have been assured that the data does not include identifying information. However, seeing cyber attacks on student data heightens my concern, and I again request the practice of this data gathering be revisited. Secondly, I am quoting an article by Brenda Labasic, a California teacher and former board member who recently attended the National Education Convention. She writes, and I quote, "The NEA does not want public education to be neutral ground in developing critical thinkers with an emphasis on academic achievement. Its priorities were apparent. Because of the 110 motions discussed and voted on, only 4 remotely addressed student academic achievement. The NEA seems to think there are many gender options, and that's why teachers and students must always address themselves with their preferred pronouns. That was demonstrated firsthand when each state delegate who spoke during the July convention was encouraged to state his or her name and preferred pronouns before addressing the assembly," end quote. This thinking has invaded Milford High School. I have here a copy of the list of the National
Merit Honor Society students who were awarded at graduation. There are 14 people on this list. All of them are referred to as they. We have Jason Strickle, they. We have Brenda Sullivan, they. Calling students they is unacceptable. It is first grammatically incorrect, and secondly, scientifically incorrect. There are two genders determined by biology, not by how somebody feels. People aren't theys. This practice creates confusion in children who are already striving to figure out where they fit and who they are. I acknowledge that you cannot oversee every teacher and what they do with gender language, but I'm asking you, however, to develop a protocol or a policy instructing teachers to teach correct grammar and correct science and remove this gender fluidity agenda. Thank you.
So to address her concerns, I did have a similar conversation with Board Member Nolan. That situation was addressed immediately after that program. It wasn't, it was uncomfortable, as I think I stated to Mrs. Nolan. And so to address every student as they was, has been addressed, and so that has been rectified.
Can I make a comment? I think you and I were talking about the academic convocation. I think Mrs. Bourne mentioned National Honor Society.
Oh, so convocation, okay. I'd have to see it. So it's been addressed, and so that would have been probably around the same time. I don't know if you have the date on that. Okay, I'll find out, but it was probably around the same time, but it's been addressed.
So
John,
I'd like
what?
to make a, sorry.
I was just, go ahead, because you're in the same stream. I just had a quick question.
Okay, I just want to thank you for reaching out to follow up on that. We have conversation and email, and I appreciate you assuring me that all students with traditional and non-traditional pronouns will be referred to as what they prefer.
Yes, they should, as you stated, we should honor what they've asked, and that's what we will do.
That was my question. What's the remedy? I mean, the fact that it's being addressed, so
I
it's.
think that's, the remedy is that if, we had spoken with mostly junior high school, not elementary, staff regarding this, and that in their surveys, if they were going to do a survey this year, that they would put, I prefer to be called, and then they could verbally ask or tell their students that if you have a different pronoun that you want to be called, you need to let us know, and we'll do it. So.
And if someone decides not to participate in the survey, what's our preferred position then for that individual?
It depends on what survey you're talking about. I mean, if
I'm
it's a
talking about
teacher design survey at the beginning of the school year so that they can get to know their students and et cetera, then I would.
I mean, if somebody says, what's your preferred pronoun, and a child doesn't answer.
But they're not asking that anymore. They're
Well,
saying, what do you prefer to be called?
What do you prefer to be called? And then they would just ask the class, if you have a pronoun that you would like to be called, please, I need to know.
I see.
Let me know. So that's how that would be
Like,
done.
for example, my daughter is Catherine. We always call her Katie. Last year, she apparently told all the teachers she's Kate, and I was like, okay, fine, whatever. This year, she's back to Katie, but I mean, I think that's one of the major intents of that. What do you want to be called? And people who go by their middle name or,
But this is a
whatever.
different, I mean, this is a totally different subject about pronouns versus how you want to be called in your name. That's two completely different issues.
The survey that's being asked, what they're asking students, it was the same survey last year that had that pronoun. They've dropped the pronoun piece of it. And it's saying, what do you prefer to be called? When you show up, is your given name Jerry? Were you, I don't know what your given name is. If your given name wasn't Jerry, you were
Jerome?
probably called a different name on the first day of school, and you said, I prefer Jerry,
I probably was, and I probably didn't like it.
right? And so,
So, look, our staff is trying to honor the kids, and trying to build relationships with them. There's no agenda, we're not connected with NEA. We are just not. Our MEA is not connected with them, and trying
mean,
to
the
push forth
perception-
an agenda.
The perception of having an agenda is really easy to.
Sure it is.
To I guess assume is a dangerous word when kids are called they, and they didn't ask to be called they. So an
Correct.
agenda is very, very easy to assume there, and I'm so glad you addressed it, by the way.
One time does not make it an agenda. So in this, I'm going to make an assumption that this happened around the same time. So it's been addressed, it's not going to happen again.
I
And
believe that.
I would caution anyone that can hear my voice that just because something happens in California, or someone believes that in California, or something happens in the state of New York, does not mean it's happening here.
Yeah.
If you have questions about it, it happened one time, respectfully. So I would just caution people to think that just because you hear it or see it somewhere, that it's happening here. Come forward, come to us, ask us. We've been transparent about this. We've had meetings about the emotional survey that you reference. I think you walked away, you said it, you walked away, you were pleased, but you're still concerned about the data mining. I get it. So we've been transparent. I just want to caution folks, that's all.
I just want to say really quickly, thank you for addressing it, John. Yeah? So,
Tanya Wagner.
Tanya Wanger, 6081 Donna J Drive. Mine is pretty simple. I have talked to some of you about it, but I am a parent of multiple robotics students, and I am concerned where you're going to put them once you take our modulars. As of right now, it's still up in the air. I know the teachers are a little concerned also, so if while you're processing what we're doing with the new junior high, can you please remember the robotics kids? We have 12 teams.
Steve.
Was it?
Steve, can you throw back up the footprint of the new middle school? So when you take the modulars, just know that the modulars go away, and robotics knows it, next May. We've got to find a solution by next May for the 2 years. So in this design, actually, if you go to the second floor where it says electives, the two, it's top, Jeff, you're closer. There are 2 dedicated spaces for robotics, right there.
So are those classrooms?
Those are ginormous
They are
labs.
just gonna be a project room.
1,100 square feet.
Okay.
Yes.
That was my concern, because
Yes.
we have these arenas that we cannot keep
Correct.
picking up and moving around.
So we're good. We made sure that robotics is where, but those are dedicated spaces to
Thank
our
you.
our 2 folks.
I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that we don't always have to respond to public participation, but I just want to say that the robotics program is discussed openly in many, many instances on this board. And everyone here, I believe, supports that effort. Ms. Mason brings it up probably 1,000 times when we discuss. I think she's the biggest cheerleader for robotics, and I listen. So, Jeff, thanks for standing up and pointing the 2 boxes out, because we're going to try our best to make sure that group's accommodated. So, yeah.
And I think, didn't we discuss also that there's some closets or storage specifically for the robotics equipment?
Jeff, I'll let you talk about that real quick.
To be 100% honest, we're not quite there yet. So when I mentioned like meeting with departments here in October and starting to talk about what those rooms look like, we'll meet with the robotics people and talk with, all right, what does that look like for you? You know, probably the biggest change with robotics is, you know, there will be a little more coordination needed, because right now with them being the modulars, you know, they've got key cards where they can, for the most part, kind of come and go as they please, because it's separate from the rest of the building. With this being kind of in the middle of the building, there's going to need to be a little more coordination about when they come and when they go, and they have practice and stuff like that. But we have definitely considered them, you know, in the square footage and where we're going to put them, and they've got a spot in the new middle school. Yeah, Mr. Daniels was just saying, you know, we've looked at those spaces, and I don't know if anybody heard me, I told Tanya that, you know, those rooms are in the neighborhood of 1,100 square feet I don't remember exactly from the POR. They're big rooms.
How big is this room?
I don't know,
mean-
count the ceiling tiles.
It's 11
So a typical,
square feet, I don't know.
a typical classroom is going to be about 820 square feet. So it's bigger than a typical classroom. So there's room, you know, and we know that those arenas don't get set up and put out, you know, and taken down every day. We know that they kind of need more of a permanent place. You know, there've been discussions about, you know, does robotics fit into the multi-purpose area of the nest if we build that? And one of the concerns about that is, you know, that basically they need a permanent space. And that's why we looked at and said they really need a space in the middle school, not in the nest, not in that multi-purpose area. Not that they might not use it at some point in time, but their real true home is more of a permanent space, and that's why we've identified some space in the middle school that's where they'll be.
I know when I first announced that I was running for the board, the very first group that contacted me and the very first group that I spoke to was the robotics group. And I've been to some events. I've seen it. I've seen them in action. They're just amazing. I mean, when the message has been received, I don't know if 1,100 square feet is enough, but it's better than the modular that we have right now. So hopefully I see you smiling, so I guess that's a good thing.
We started off on the stage at the junior high, so.
It's a step in the right direction. We're going to take care of them as best we can. Within budget.
Very good. Do we have anyone else?
Yeah. Amanda Fox?
Amanda Fox, she, her, 6331 Lake Ridge Court, Loveland, Ohio. I'm going to read something from a pubmed.gov. Suicide among transgender youth, elucidating the role of interpersonal risk factors. Data indicates that 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves, and 40% have attempted suicide, with suicide highest among transgender youth. Using minority stress theory and interpersonal theory of suicide, this study aims to better understand suicide risk among transgender youth. The present study examines the influence and interverbal risk factors, interpersonal and environmental microaggressions, internalized self-stigma, and adverse childhood experiences. We are in the business of child development. I don't care if there is 1 or 50 transgender students in this district, they deserve the respect and acknowledgement of who they truly are. Sitting up here and talking about them as if they don't exist and using a he, him, she, her pronoun appropriately for them is absolutely ridiculous. There are students that are going to go home at night when they hear adults in their life not validate who they are as a human and possibly attempt suicide. It is not in the best interest of this community for any of our students to lose another peer. My son is a junior in high school. He has had 2 students. One passed away and one was in a very bad car accident. It is not okay that these students go through it. I had a friend in high school kill himself when I was a senior in high school. I still think about Josh Devi every day, and every time our school has any sort of activity for the class of 2021, it is traumatic for all of us that Josh is not with us. And if my students have to lose a friend because we sit here every third Thursday of the month and talk about how transgender students using he, she, him, her, they, whatever is a problem for the adults in this room, then I need you to talk to somebody about it. Talk to a professional, get advice from someone who handles children. We have Cincinnati Children's. They are renowned in this country, top 3 hospitals in the United States of America. If they acknowledge transgenders, we should be acknowledging them too in this room.
Anyone else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Thanks to everyone. Moving on, the next regular board meeting for the school board is September the 15th, 2022, in this room at 6 p.m. Do we have any closing comments from the board?
I wanted to, first of all, acknowledge that Children's Hospital does have one of the top transgender organizations. We are constantly, as a children's hospital, a leader in the care of all students. And gender is not binary. It is not assigned at birth. It is, I am not an expert in any of this areas, but our job as educators, as Mrs. Fox mentioned, is to support all of our students. And we need to make all of them welcome. And if it's as simple as offering pronouns, then our teachers can help do that. And I appreciate that. Separately, I wanted to say what an amazing month it has been, and it's only August 18th, but I was thinking about all the things that have happened in the district with the SHP middle school meeting, the safety meeting, the Milford University, that I came in was a cheerleader. I missed the cheerleader picture, but I was out there cheering at 7:30. And I apparently did not do a good enough job recruiting there was not a single student from Wittenberg, so I'm gonna need to go back to my alma mater and get some teachers here. The opening of Charity Lucas Turf with the Lucas family back for that was amazing. The Convocation and feeling the energy, and John's pants, if you haven't, he should wear those again. And then Meet the Teacher Night and the start of school. It just has been such an awesome month, and I've been, the energy, I feel like we're getting back to school. There is no new normal, I guess, but just feeling the energy of what it's like to go back to school, to be in person. The teachers are so excited. The energy is palpable. So it just is really going to be a great year. So I'm excited for that.
I mean, I was just going to jump on that because our convocation was about chasing smiles, not chasing flies. Thank you for wearing it. It was great. Had a great message from my former school counselor, who is about 70 years old. Couldn't make it, but she did send a letter in, and someone read it. It was great. But we're not going to chase flies. Flies are distractions, and we're going to chase smiles every day and impact our students' lives. So that's our theme for this year, and we're going to go with it.
I don't want to harp on the transgender thing, but I do think it is really important to bring up. I do think that these students are at risk, and I do think it's important that they are recognized by their preferred pronouns. I need some clarification on something. I know that with the convocation last year, everybody was referred to as they, and so we remedied that by just clarifying that at the beginning of the year, they're asked their preferred name, and then they're not asked.
So if going forward, if we were at the same ceremony, they would either change how they're the verbiage that they would use, or they would specifically recognize you as he or she or they, whatever you want to be. So we recognize that.
Okay, and the way that we're understanding what their preferred pronouns are is asking like a general question in class and then saying like, come up to me if.
Well, so at the beginning of the school year, at the junior high and high school, and even in lower grades, but certainly junior high and high school, the survey in the past, some of the surveys have had specific questions about what is your preferred pronoun.
Okay.
So what do you prefer to be called? So it could be something besides a pronoun, as Emily described her daughter. And then if there is someone who is specifically wants to have a different pronoun, then that will be recognized, but they have to let the teacher know.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I'm in full support of that remedy. I hope that that's clear. I'm in full support of a student that wants to be called a particular pronoun or a particular name. I think that's what we should call them. I hope that that's really, really clear. There's not one comment that I made tonight that said that I am against a student wanting to be called a particular pronoun or a name. If you want to be called they, he, she, your preferred pronoun, that's what we need to respect and move forward with. I'm in full support of that, to be clear.
Right, and to be clear, the reason I initiated that conversation is after the convocation of 71 students being called they, found it pretty unlikely that all 72 or 71 preferred they, which is why I reached out and said I thought they should be called whatever they preferred, whether that's traditional or non-traditional. I just found it unlikely that they all preferred they.
But they is is neutral group of people, and it wouldn't call out. So if I wanted to be he, I might feel called out in a special ceremony where there's only 50 people that there is. So I do think John had already addressed it and had come up with stuff, but.
The remedy is we'll call them what they would like to be called, and then the case is over. Let's move forward. Let's respect what the students want to be called and move forward, and not assume that a student wants to be called something that they don't want to be called. And that's what we do. And it sounds like John has implemented, addressed it, and we're on level footing right now. Fair to say? Sounds like it's been remedied. Thank you.
Agreed. Any other comments? Hearing none, let's move on to the good news report, some of which is a recap of what we've already talked about, but I'm going to get it all in one big slug anyway. Good news report. Charity Lucas Stadium turf project is now complete. We rededicated the field last Friday, Charity Lucas Field 2.0 as we're referring to it. In the morning, we had representatives from the Bengals, including Houday, there to help us dedicate the field, and then we did a punt, pass, and sprint competition for our youth football players. In the afternoon, we had an alumni soccer game with over 90 people that showed up for that alumni game. So the alumni is really excited about that field.
I saw giant things of Advil after that meeting, after that game.
I'm sorry?
Giant bottles of Advil after that meeting.
Yes.
Or that game.
We had some people that I think Alan Grotehouse said, I'm playing, but see the circle here right in the center of the field? He says, I'm not moving out of this circle. So it was great to see everybody, whether they were young or old or anywhere in between, out there for that. After that, we did another dedication with the Lucas family, for whom the field is named for charity. And we had representatives from FC Cincinnati there for the afternoon. We did another ribbon cutting ceremony. And then we had two soccer games. We had the first two official counting soccer games on that field. One boys, one girls. Girls won 8-1. The boys won 8-0. And the weather was absolutely perfect. It was 75-degree day with low humidity. You could not have asked for a better day. Milford University, we talked about that a little while ago, was held on the 4th and the 5th here in the board office and elsewhere all around in different conference rooms and in different locations as well. That was a great event. It's good to see the enthusiasm of those young teachers as they come in for the first time, and that was a lot of fun to be a part of. Eagle Stadium. The lighting project is now complete. We've been talking about that for a while. Ready for the first home game tomorrow night. And I got to tell you, I can't wait for the first touchdown so we can see a light show out there. By the way, the district paid for the lights, but private donations paid for the show. So just want to make sure that we're clear on that. That was all private donations to do that little extra for the lights. Convocation was held Monday for all the district teachers, as Emily has her shirt on there. The theme of the convocation was Chasing Smiles, and we have got a bunch of people that are ready to go. When it got to Wednesday, I think they were about ready to explode because they were so excited to be back and have less restrictions on them, whether it's masks or it's chasing after contacts, things of that nature. They were just ready to go and really hyped up. First day of school was yesterday, and the Milford district is up and running now. Mr. Spicer got a lot of airtime on Channel 5 and Channel 12. He was very coherent throughout, even though he started at about 5:30 in the morning with the first show. And
5 o'clock.
excuse me, 5 o'clock. I didn't get
I
up
got
for
an
that
invite
one,
from
but
Friday.
I was here for the 6:30 show. And recapping our top story tonight, great news for the arts community as the Board of Education approved tonight a design for the much-needed renovation of the high school auditorium. 33 years since we've done anything to that facility of any consequence. Dates to remember, again, first football game is tomorrow night at Eagle Stadium, powered by Cullen Electric. We're playing Edgewood. Game time is 7 o'clock. I hope everybody comes out and packs the stands, and we have an excited crowd there. It'll be a good game. Let's see. We have Milford, the high school marching band is holding their Milford Marching Showcase. It's a 6-band showcase. Some bigger bands in this group. That is August 27th, starting at 6:30 p.m. over at Eagle Stadium. Admission for that is $10, and we hope we have a nice crowd out there. It's a good opportunity for our kids to have some judges come in there and actually not score them, but critique them and help tell them how they can make their shows better. So we're excited about that. That is all I have. Any other comments?
Good news.
Okay. The board is now going to go into executive session. And from the executive session, we will not be returning here except to adjourn the meeting, and that may be an hour, it may be an hour and a half, it may be longer, it may be shorter. I have no idea. I need a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of considering the employment and compensation of a public employee.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Call a roll.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes, thank you, everyone.